Alrighty, guys. So we've finally made it. We are at the last translation from stage 29 in Cambridge Latin. So Arcus Titi duo. So let's jump into it. The dramatic conclusion of the story. Ad arcum pompa pervenit. So a perfect tense verb, nominative subject, pompa, prepositional phrase. So the procession arrived at the arch. Domitianus, nominative subject. Egressus ecoros, so we've got a participial phrase, perfect passive participle, but it is a deponent verb, egredior. So agressus, therefore, is what Cambridge calls a perfect active participle. So it's modifying Domitianus. So Domitian, having left from his chariot, a plus kuro is an appellate of separation. So having left his chariot is probably the best way to translate that. And then notice this egressus it's even though it's a participle, the verbal form of it is taking an ut clause, a purpose clause. So having left his chariot, ut to faceret, imperfect subjunctive, to make or to complete, to do, to perform. Probably we would translate faceret, perform, sacrificium, in order to perform the sacrifice. And then we've got sinitores equitesque. These are both third declensions, so they could be plural subjects or objects, but we know from the singular verb, salutavit, that perfect verb right there, they have to be the direct object. Also Domitianus, the subject. So greeted the senators and knights. Let's put it all together. Domitian, having left his chariot in order to perform the sacrifice, greeted the senators and knights. Tum, then, oculos in arcum ipsum convertit. So the main verb right here is convertit. He turned. And then what did he turn? His oculos, his direct object right there, accusative plural. He turned his eyes. And then in right here is probably closest way to translate this would be unto. But he turned his eyes towards is another way, probably a more modern way to translate it, towards the arcum ipsum, the arch itself. So let's put it all together. Then he turned his eyes to the arch itself. Admiratione et affectus imperator salvium ad se arcesitum valde laudavit. So we're going to try and translate this left to right in order to get the meaning. It's a little bit hard. Obviously, Latin has a more fluid word order. So the emperor, having been moved by admiration, praised, laudavit, salvius, and then we have a participial phrase modifying salvius, having been summoned to him. So say it's going with the odd. It's going off of that odd motion towards, but it's referring back to the emperor. And then valde, greatly. So he greatly praised. It's an adverb there. So this is kind of a problem because our subject, imperator, is right next to our direct object, and both the subject and the direct object have their own participial phrases. The subject's participial phrase comes before it. The object's participial phrase comes after it. And then we have this pronoun, say, which is referring to the subject. So it's a little bit confusing, but probably the best way to translate this all together is having been moved by admiration, the emperor, having summoned Salvius to himself, praised him greatly. You have to sort of massage the word order there. We get everything together and it makes sense, more or less. Next sentence. Imperavit ei ut haterio gratias agerit. So we know that the imperawit and the ut, it's going to introduce an indirect command. So imperawit, perfect tense verb, he ordered, and then it takes a dative, not as a direct object, but we'll translate it as a direct object. He ordered him, ut to, ageret gratias. So this is an idiomatic phrase here. It means to give thanks. To give thanks, haterio, the data right there, dative of interest, to haterius. So let's put that all together. He ordered him to give thanks to haterius. Next sentence, ende, then progressus ad aram, having advanced to the altar. So progressus is a perfect active participle according to Cambridge. It's a perfect passive participle from a deponent verb, progredior. So that's why it's translated like that. So then having advanced towards the altar, capit took the cultrum, direct object that is it's like a meat cleaver. It's a sacrificial knife. Capit, by the way, is a perfect tense verb. This then takes this quo clause right here. It's Cambridge is going to call this a purpose clause, but everywhere else it's might also be called one of those relative clauses of characteristic. It's using this ablative form of qui to describe the cultrum, let's say the knife. What kind of knife is it? Well, it's this knife, the knife by which he might sacrifice the victim. They, both in the translation you see over here and according to what Cambridge is trying to get you to think of this as, they're trying to think of it as this is the reason that he took up the blade, and that's why they call it a purpose clause. But you can still, in the same way you can think of it as a clause describing the knife. Both are reasonable interpretations of this clause right here. So we can tell it has this imperfect subjunctive verb right there, sacrificaret, and then direct object, victimam. So putting it all together, then then having advanced to the altar, he took the knife by which he might sacrifice the victim. Next sentence. Servus ei jugulum tare obtulet. So the servus, the subject of obtulet, perfect verb, and then jugulum is the direct object. Tauri is a possessive genitive going with jugulum, and ae is it's what would often be called it's a dative that's the indirect object, or sometimes called the dative of the remoter object in British systems. It is, I think you could easily also say that this is a dative of interest. So he's doing it for this person. So let's put it all together. The slave, the servus, obtulet, offered the jugulum, the throat, tauri, of the bull, genitive of the bull, to him, to that guy. That is to say, the emperor. We'll unpack what's going on here after the end of this next sentence. Dende, then, Domitianus, the nominative subject right there, sacrificavit, perfect main verb of this, and then victimam, accused of direct object. Then Domitian sacrificed the victim. So what we have here is the emperor was also the head priest of Roman ceremony. This is something that Augustus particularly wanted to take up because he wanted Roman emperors to be known for being pious, and Romans were extremely religious. Now, this doesn't mean that all of them believed in the Roman religion that they followed. Quite a few educated Romans did not. Lucretius is a very notable ancient, he's a doctor, a philosopher, a poet, and an atheist from this time. He albeit espousing atheism, something that people were a bit uncomfortable with because their culture was bound together by religion. He uses religious symbols in his writing a lot. So religion was everywhere in the ancient world. and it was extremely important to perform religious functions, like, for example, giving sacrifices. Furthermore, bulls, those who have taken my classes know that there's a lot that I talk about in terms of ancient religions and bulls. If you want a very long discussion, please come talk to me about that. For this, bulls are really strong animals, really the best offering that you can give at any time would be a bull, because it's so big and important for religion. And furthermore, it was something bulls had to agree to be sacrificed. So what they would do is they would sprinkle water on their heads to make them nod. It was called the nod of assent. And this was them nodding their heads saying, I agree to be sacrificed for the good of the people, or something like that. Their blood was poured out. It was their jugulum, this is where we get the word jugular, like jugular vein, was cut, and it was shed in front of the altar, and then they were carved up. The organs were looked at for auguries, and then the meat was cooked up. The gods would receive that incense. This sacrifice is happening for Titus. This was another thing that was happening more and more at this period, that Roman emperors became apotheosized, as in they became deified after they died, so they could receive offerings. So this is sort of what's happening. So remember, Titus has died previous to this. Last little bit of the sentence, which I've left off translating until now, is haec locutus. And this is a perfect passive participle. It's going off of Domitianus. It is also from a deponent verb, so therefore it's a perfect active participle. Having said, and then haec is from hic haec hoc, and it is an accusative plural. It's accusative plural. It can also be a nominative singular, but this right here, it's accusative plural. So having spoken haec these things, it's the direct object of locutus. And then we're going to go into direct speech right here of what he is saying. You'll see this construction, by the way, a lot, this haec locutus in original Latin. So get used to that. So tibi, to you, it's a dative of interest. Dive Tite. These are vocatives right here. He's addressing the dead but deified Titus. Haec victima nunc sacrificatur. Now remember how I said haec could be a nominative singular as well? Here it is. It's modifying victima, which is the subject of this passive voice verb, sacrificatur. So to you, divine Titus, this victim now, nunc adverb, is sacrificed. Tibi, to you, hic Arcus dedicator. So same construction, dative of interest. Hic Arcus is the nominative subject, and dedicator is that active, present passive verb. Sorry, it's not active, it's passive with that tour ending. So to you, this arch is dedicated. And then lastly, we have a third to you phrase. This is called using this construction of three clauses of a similar form. It's called a tricolon crescens. Well, specifically with each clause being a little bit longer, it's called tricolon crescens. If they're about the same length, it's just a tricolon. Very, very common in Roman writing right here. So to you, gratiae maximi. So here we go. A populo Romano aguntur. So this is the nominative subject. It's a plural nominative subject. To you, greatest thanks, aguntur, is given. So again, we've got that idiomatic phrase, gratias, ago, gratias. And then because it's a passive voice verb, we have that ablative of agent, a populo Romano, by the Roman people. So we'll put that all together again. To you, greatest thanks is given by the Roman people. Next sentence, subito. So suddenly. And then we've got this little phrase in here, subordinated by doom. While the Romans, Romani oculos in sacrificium intente deficunt. So while the Romans, nominative plural subject of deficunt, fixed, and then what did they fix? They fixed their eyes, the direct object, And where did they fix it? This prepositional phrase, in sacrificium, onto or unto the sacrifice. So they were watching the sacrifice. And how are they doing it? Here's the adverb intently, intente. So Simon, here we go, this is our main clause right here. Simon occasionem noctus prosiluit. So we have Simon jumping back in here. He's the subject of this main clause. And we have this participial phrase that's modifying him, noctus occasionem. So noctus is from a deponent verb, and it means to chance upon or to seize, like an opportunity usually. So having seized the occasion, it's deponent and therefore can take that accusative direct object. So having seized the opportunity, prosiluit. So perfect tense verb from prosilio, he jumped forward or leapt forward. So we'll put that all together. Suddenly, while the Romans fixed their eyes intently on the sacrifice, Simon, having seized the opportunity, leapt forth. Next word, we have this very, very quick succession of events that's happening now. So, medios in sacratus erudit. So he just broke. He broke in medios sacros, into the midst of the priests. Remember that I'm translating sacerdotes as a genitive, even though it's not. It's literally is in mid priests. So he burst into the middle of the priests. Raput cultrum, he grabbed the knife. So another perfect tense verb, cultrum direct object. And then, so putting it all together, he burst into the middle of the priests, he grabbed the knife. Omnes spectatores emote stabant. So nominative subjects, omnes and spectatores, all the spectators, stabant, were standing, emoti, motionless. Now I'm translating emoti more or less an apposition to the spectatores. You could reasonably look at it as a participle that is modifying the spectatores. So just an adjective, a verbal adjective there. You could say all the motionless spectators were standing, but it doesn't sound as good in English. So I translate it as all the spectators were standing motionless. Atoniti, eius audacia. So we have another participle. We have a participial phrase. This is another participle modifying spectatores, just like emoti. But this is atoniti, astonished, having been astonished. Audacia, so we've got an ablative, an instrumental ablative right here. By the audacity, eius is a genitive, it's a possessive genitive of him. So by his boldness. So putting it all together, all the spectators were standing motionless, astonished by his boldness. Next sentence, Domitianus pavore comotus pedem retulit. So Domitian is our nominative subject, and then we have another participial phrase, perfect passive participle, having been moved by, and this is an ablative, instrumental ablative from pavor, meaning having been moved by panic. Retulit pedem, so he literally moved back his foot. So we would translate that more naturally into English as he stepped back. So putting it all together, Domitian, having been moved by panic, stepped back. Retulit, by the way, comes from the verb refero. It's a perfect form of it. Last paragraph. Non imperatorem tamen Simon petiuit. So this is a little bit surprising. We're expecting Simon to jump forward and try and kill the emperor. No. And it leads off with no. So Simon, nominative subject, non, did not, that negating adverb, petiuit. And peto means to make after. When we first see this verb at the very beginning of Cambridge Latin, it's used to mean to attack. So we'll translate it here as attack. So Simon, Tamen, however, did not attack, perfect tense verb. Who did he not attack? The imperatorem, the accusative direct object. So Simon, however, did not attack the emperor. Cultrum in manu tenens clamavit. So tenens, there's no explicitly stated subject of clamavit. We know that it's Simon still, because it's going off of the last sentence. Tenens is the only thing that we have in the nominative singular, and it is a present active participle. It means holding. So it's the one holding. And what is he holding? The accusative direct object of tenens is cultrum, that knife. And where is he holding it? In manu. So monos is obviously the fourth declension right there, and it's a locatival ablative. So holding the knife in his, we'll put his in there for ease of translation, in his hand, he shouted, nos, nominative subject, we, qui superstites Judaeorum rebellantium sumus. So we, qui, this is a relative clause modifying nos, who, and then sumus are, superstites, remember this means survivors, and then Judaeorum rebellantium, of the Jewish revolts. We who are survivors of the Jewish revolt, and then this is the main verb of this direct statement, which nos is the subject. Nullimus, do not want, right? And then that prolative infinitive, survire, to be slaves. And then luckily in English, this takes a more or less a dative, to the Romans, because this will take a dative in Latin as well. Something that we've seen a lot in this passage. So let's put it all together. So nos, we who are the survivors of the Jewish revolts, do not want to be slaves to the Romans. Mortem obire malumos. So this is another plural verb, and it's from malo. And malo is one of those verbs that it's the verb is pretty simple. It's that the word, there's a bunch of different malos in Latin. There's a malo that means malus, that's an apple. Malus is obviously bad, and malo can mean to prefer. If anyone likes music, specifically opera or that of Benjamin Britten, there's a book called The Turning of the Screw by Henry James. It's turned into an opera by Benjamin Britten. It's a very, very creepy opera. If you like Benjamin Britten, he's an acquired taste. But there's a song, schoolboy is learning Latin, and he's singing a little schoolboy phrase that was used to remember the different uses of and the different forms of malo, and it's malo, 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 malo. So we prefer obire, so this is ob plus ao. So to meet with is what it means. We prefer to meet death, mortem, the accusative direct object of obire. We prefer to meet death. Then here's this phrase again, haec locutus. So he, having said these things, perfect past participle, accusative direct object. Haec is a plural accusative from Hecatoc. So having said these things, and notice that there's no subject to the main verb of this commisit. So this participial phrase is acting as the subject essentially. So he committed the dirum facinus, so the terrible act. Facinus can be both an act or a crime. So he committed the terrible act. And we don't know what this horrible act is yet. We're about to learn. Let's see. Matrim et avium. So these are accusative direct objects. And then amplexus. So we have a participial phrase here. There's no directly stated subject in this sentence. So we know that this participial phrase is acting as the subject. So he, amplexus, having embraced. And who is he embraced? The mother, the matram, at Awia. The Awia is his grandmother. So he, having embraced his mother and grandmother. Cultro, oh no, you've got an ablative right here of cultrum. It's an instrumental ablative. With the knife, statum, immediately, so that's an adverb right here. Okidit, killed them. Again, this is modeling what's happening based on what happened at the end of story at Masada. Very, very sad here. So he killed them immediately. Let's put that all together. So he, having embraced his mother and grandmother, immediately killed them with his knife. Notice I had to put both them and his in there. If you include little words like this, make sure to put them in brackets. Tum, then the brothers, fratres, haudquam resistentes. So this is a participial phrase modifying the brothers, and fratres, it could be a nominative subject, but it's not. It's an accusative direct object. Then the brothers, resisting, not at all, haudquam, participial phrase modifying them, right? Eodem modo. So eodem means in the same modo way, in the same manner, interfecit. So we're getting to use all of those words that I told you meant to kill or to die. Well, I told you, here they are, we're using them. So he killed them in the same way. Let's put it all together. Then, in the same way, he killed, interfecit, perfect tense, the brothers who were resisting not at all. Postremo, finally, last, magna voce. So this is an instrumental ablative with a great voice. He, let's see, waiting for the little block that's blocking my Latin. It's probably not popping up on the recording. There we go. De testatus populum Romanum se ipsum cultruf tan fixit. So with a great voice, detestatus, having cursed, so it's a passive participle, and who's he cursing? The populum Romanum, the people, the Roman people. That is a perfect passive participle. It is, this whole phrase is, again, acting as the subject of that main verb, transfixit, which doesn't have any other verb. It doesn't have any other subject explicitly stated, even though we know it's Simon. So he, main verb transfixit, and that is stabbed. Se ipsum, se is the reflexive pronoun, ipsum is intensifying that, going with se. Stabbed he himself, and then cultro is our final ablative of instrument with the knife. So let's put it all together. Postremo magna voce populum Romanum detestatus se ipse cultura transfixit. At last, with a great voice, having cursed the people, the Roman people, he stabbed himself with the knife. Okay, very, very depressing ending to this story. So we are finally done with stage 29. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in stage 30 with more translations.